Making the dough in a bread maker, and if you haven't used a bread maker before, I'm going to be going step by step for how to make dough or how to make bread in the bread maker. So you want to remove the pan. So I like to remove the pan just in case if I spill something while I'm making the dough, it doesn't end up getting on the heating element at the bottom of the bread maker. So in the bread maker, you have to make sure the paddles for stirring the dough or mixing the dough are in place before you start filling it up. And we always put the wet ingredients at the bottom first. So we start with 1 cup of milk. Okay. And then we put our 2 eggs in at the bottom, our wet ingredients. There you go, our farm fresh eggs from our chickens. We have a 1/4 cup of room temperature butter that can go in there. Now that all of our wet ingredients are in, our dry ingredients are going to go on top. So I have 1½ teaspoons of salt, a 1/4 cup of sugar. That's what makes this recipe sweet. And I'll just spread it around in there. We have 3½ cups of white flour. So when we put the flour in, we want to spread it across the liquids to cover all the liquids over. So we'll just spread that across, making sure to cover the liquids. Excellent. Okay. And the last ingredient is the yeast. So when you add yeast in, you need to make sure that the yeast does not touch any of the wet ingredients until it starts mixing. So we have a mound of flour in the middle now. So what I do is I just take a spoon and I make a little bowl for the yeast to go in. When you measure out the yeast, it's really important that you use a dry teaspoon. So I'm just using the teaspoon that I used for the salt to put in. So in there goes 3 teaspoons of dry yeast. Okay, yeah, just like that. And I like just to cover it over. Now that we have all the ingredients in the tray, we're going to put the tray back into the bread maker. And when you put the tray in, you have to make sure you put it in the correct way for your bread maker. And it should lock into the bottom like that so it doesn't move around. You shut the top. You have to select the right function. So number 8 for mine is dough. So I'll flip through, find number 8, press start, and in 1 hour and 50 minutes my dough will be ready to get made. With my bread maker, there's a 15-minute delay to start mixing. It has a warming period. So don't be shocked if your bread maker doesn't turn on right away, because it might have that 15-minute delay as well. So I'll check back in 1 hour and 50 minutes and show you how to make the dough into a 6 braid loaf. So our dough is finished and we'll pull it out there. It looks really nice. Excellent. And on our baking space today, we'll put some flour down like that so the dough doesn't stick to the table. And we'll pull the dough out like that. Be careful, sometimes the paddles come out, but the paddles stayed in this time. So we're just going to get some flour around it. And for this recipe, we're going to split the dough into 6 sections. So just with a knife, as even as possible, keeping it covered in flour. We're going to split it up. So 6. And with each section, we need to make about a 12-inch long piece to make the bread out of. So just taking it with your hands like that. It should just be a little bit narrower at the ends for a braid. Sometimes they can roll it. It's looking nice. And you want to make them as even as possible. If they're not, this recipe, when we braid them, we'll have a little bit of a leeway. Okay, so we have our 6 pieces lined up. They're pretty even there. This one's giving me a hard time. There we go. And now we need to braid the 6 pieces. And if you know how to braid with 3 pieces, you know that we always start on the outside and we bring the outsides in. So it's the same idea when you're braiding with 6 pieces. So we start on the outside and we bring it in like that. And when we braid, it's just over, under, over, under. So if we go over on this one, we have to go under on this one, like that. Okay? And then, so for over, so for over on this one, right? Then we would be under on this one like that. And then on, so it would be opposite on this one going across. Like this. So over, under, over, under. And then when we get to the end, we curl it around or we pull it forward. So we'll curl this one around like that. So when we get to the end, we're either curling it around or pulling it under. So we're curling this one around, going over, under, over, under, over, under, like that. So again, we're on the end, so we're going to pull that piece over. So pull it over like that. So over, under, under. So we're on the end here. So it's going to go over like that. So we'll pull it around. So we're on the side here. Pull this one over. Pull this one over. And you just weave it like that. So now with the ends, you just have to play around with it and use the rest of the ends up to make it look like a braid. Sometimes if I don't have enough left, I'll just make it thin like this, and I'll stretch it across. And when it rises, you won't be able to tell that this is a thin piece compared to the one beside it that's thick, because it all rises pretty evenly. So you want to make it as nice as possible, as smooth as possible. So I like to curl the ends under like that. So at the opposite end, make sure that the braid is finished as much as possible. Yeah, I got a little bit extra there, so I'll pretend that that's a full twist there. Oh, got a little piece at the end. So maybe I'll just pull this around like that. Just got to make it work. You won't notice when it rises. That piece is giving me a hard time. Let's see what I can do there. You pull it around, pull it over. There we go. And then I'll curl it under like that. Yeah, I think that's okay. Won't really notice it when it rises anyways. There we go. Now that we have our braid done, we're going to transfer it to a baking tray lined with parchment paper. So there we go. I'm going to make sure it's spread out okay. And now it has to rise for 30 minutes. So at my place, I rise it just in front of the oven there. And in our gas oven, the heat escapes out of the top piece here. So to make a nice, warm, moist area where the dough can rise, I take a damp, clean dish towel and I'll lay it on top of just lightly on top of the dough, making sure it's not too heavy there. Okay. And then I'll turn my oven on, I'll preheat it. So it's going to be baking at 375. So I'll preheat it to 375, and while it's heating, the warm air will be coming out the bottom here, and the damp towel will keep it moist and warm, nice and moist under there. So I'll set my timer. It needs to rise for 30 minutes, and we'll check back in after 30 minutes and put the egg wash on it. The bread's risen for 30 minutes now, so we'll take off the top. Oh, looks nice there. Okay, smooth that little piece out. So now we need to put the egg wash on top. And it's just an egg yolk. So how you separate the egg yolk from the egg, you crack it in half, and you just transfer it from shell to shell like this until just the yolk is left. There we go. Put the yolk in here. Oh. And then with the egg yolk, we're just going to mix it up a bit. Now we're just going to put a light egg yolk wash over the whole loaf. There we go. Now it's going to cook for 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes in the oven. So the 30 minutes is done, cooking time. So we'll take it out. Oh, it looks good. Now I like to transfer it to a cooling rack so the bottom doesn't keep cooking on the hot tray. So let's transfer it over and we'll let it cool down. Oh, that looks really good. And when I serve this, I just tell people to pull apart a piece or pull apart like a braid rather than cutting it up. It looks good. I think they'll enjoy it. Take care.